And we welcome you back. We want to tackle more on jobs right now, and specifically the ideas the candidates have, individual unique ideas for creating more American jobs, and specifically, Joss, asking about what we think created the age of American energy, which was infrastructure.
Infrastructure. We have an example of that here in New Hampshire. If you traveled up I-93 from Boston, I-93 north, you probably went over what was a widening project that's going on. We're about $350 million away from getting this project completed. And a lot of people here think that this is a very important project to get done in terms of our regional economy. So the question is, again, infrastructure. With the increasing demand on our roads and bridges and the aging roads and bridges, how committed would you be, and we'll start with you, Governor Romney, to invest not so much as a stimulus package, but a true economic growth package on our infrastructure?
Well, there are certain things that government can do to encourage an economy, and rebuilding an infrastructure that's aging is one of those. We had in my state 550 structurally deficient bridges. We've got to improve our bridges, improve our roads, improve our rail beds, improve our air transportation system in order to be competitive. But fundamentally, what happens in America that creates jobs is not government. It has its role, but by and large, it gets in the way of creating jobs. It's taxed too much. It regulates too much. It has energy policies that keep us from using our own energy. It has trade policies which too often favor people who are taking jobs away from us. And so we're going to have government change its orientation to be encouraging the private sector. And fundamentally, what makes America the most productive and the wealthiest nation, the major nations in the world, our GDP per capita, our income per person in America is 50% higher than that of the average person in Europe. Why is that? It's because of the entrepreneurial spirit of the American people, of the ability of Americans to innovate, to create. We have a nation which is based upon opportunity and merit. We draw people here who seek freedom, and these people have built enterprises that employ and that make America stronger. We have a president who has an entirely different view. He wants us to turn into a European-style welfare state and have government take from some to give to others. That will kill the ability of America to provide for a prosperous future, to secure our freedom, and to give us the rights which would have been in our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. I believe in an America that's based upon opportunity and freedom, not President Obama's social welfare state.
Speaker Gingrich, I know you agree with Governor Romney again on his views on President Obama, but how would your plans on job creation distinguish you from Governor Romney?
Well, if you're talking about infrastructure?
Infrastructure, and more broadly, job creation.
But let's stick with infrastructure things, because I think it's a very big, very important topic. You cannot compete with China in the long run if you have an inferior infrastructure. You've got to move to a 21st century model. That means you got to be technologically smart, and you have to make investments. So, for example, here, the Northern Pass project ought to be buried and should be along the state right-of-way, which means you're going to use modern techniques to bring electricity from Quebec all the way down to Boston in a way that also preserves the beauty of northern New Hampshire. I would have an energy program designed to get us free from Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela. 2/3 of the government revenue from that would go to debt reduction and to paying off the debt. 1/3 would go to infrastructure, which would give you the ability to have an infrastructure investment program that would actually get us back on track. And you look at places like the highways you're describing, the bridges the governor just described. If you don't have some systematic investment program, then you are not going to be able, I think, to compete with China and India.
Governor Huntsman, where's the money going to come from?
We've got to earn our way forward. There's no question about it. Governors learn how to pay the bills. In order to pay the bills, you've got to expand your economic base. And that's a problem we have in the United States right now. We read about the jobs that have ticked upward in this country, and we're all very happy about that. We're providing people more in the way of real opportunity. But think of where this country would be if during the first 2 years of Barack Obama, it would have had a different president. I would have ripped open the tax code, and I would have done what Simpson-Bowles recommended. I would have cleaned out all of the loopholes and the deductions that weigh down this country to the tune of $1.1 trillion. We've got a corrupt tax code. So you've got to say, how are we going to pay for it? We've got to stimulate some confidence in the creative class in this country. Right now, they're sitting on their hands, and they're not going to have a more optimistic view of our direction until such time.
You would raise the same amount of revenue as Simpson-Bowles, that Simpson-Bowles plan that was the commission appointed by President Obama. Would anybody else on the stage agree with that?
I'm sorry?
To raise the kind of revenues called for in the Simpson-Bowles commission?
No. No, I wouldn't. In fact, our plan puts together a package that focuses on simplifying the tax code, and I agree with Governor Huntsman on that. 5 deductions: health care, housing, pensions, children, and charities. Everything else goes. We focus on the pillars that have broad consensus of this country and are important sectors of our economy, including our children. The other side is the corporate side. We cut it in half, 17.5%, but I do something different than everybody else. I'm very worried about a sector of our economy that has been under fire. I come from southwestern Pennsylvania, the heart of the steel country, the heart of manufacturing, and it's been devastated because we are uncompetitive. 30 years ago, we were devastated because business and labor didn't understand global competitiveness, and they made a lot of mistakes. They weren't prepared for it, and we lost a lot of jobs. That's not what's happening now. Our productivity gains, our labor force, they're doing their job, they're being competitive, but they're running into a stiff headwind called government. And it's government taxation, 35% corporate tax, which is the highest in the world. It's a tax that doesn't easily offset when we try to export, which makes it even more difficult for us to export.
For lowering the corporate tax.
No one's to zero it out for manufacturers and processors, which is what I do, because we are at a 20% cost differential with our 9 top trading partners on average. And that 20% cost differential, that is excluding labor costs. So it is government taxation, eliminating the corporate tax, gets rid of a big chunk of that. It's regulation. This administration is on track. I think it's Congressional Research Service, they look at regulations and they price the highest cost ones that are over $100 million. On Bush and Clinton, there were 60 on average per year under those 2 administrations. Last year, under President Obama, there was 150 of those types of regulations. And I would repeal every one of them and replace them with ones that are less costly or not replace them at all.
Why not go to zero?
Want to go to zero? There's no question. It'd be great not to have any taxes, but unfortunately we have to have taxes to pay for our military, to pay for the programs that care for those that can't care for themselves, but our taxes are too high. Government at all levels during the days of John F. Kennedy consumed 27% of our economy, about a quarter. Today it consumes 37% of our economy. We're only inches away from no longer being a free economy. And our Democrat friends want us to just keep raising taxes just a little more. Just give us a little more. Government is already too big. We have to rein in the scale of the federal government. And so we do need to have our employer tax rates brought down to be competitive with other nations. That's about 25%. We also have to make sure that we give relief to people who need it most. The people that have been hurt in the Obama economy are the people in the middle class. And so I put in place a significant savings incentive, tax reduction. I eliminate any tax on savings for middle-income Americans. No tax on interest, dividends, or capital gains. But I look long-term to do just what John indicated, which is to take Bowles-Simpson and to reduce the rates in our tax code, to reduce the number of exemptions and limit the amount of exemptions that can occur. At the same time, I don't want to raise capital gains tax rates as they do in Bowles-Simpson, but simplifying the code, broadening the base is the right way to go for our tax code long term, and immediately let's get some relief for middle-income Americans.
And Congressman Paul, we hear over and over again people are hoping for a great vision for America once again, America on the move once again. Give us the great vision that is realistic given the financial situation, a realistic great vision for America.
Well, it's to restore America to our freedoms, restore America to our principles, and that is individual liberty and our Constitution and sound money. And in doing that, you have to understand economics. You can't solve any of this economic crisis unless you know where the business cycle comes from and why you have bubbles and why they break. You have to understand that we've had a financial bubble that's been going on for 40 years. It's collapsing. Nobody quite recognizes it, but we're in the midst of a real big correction. And the only way you can get back to growth is you have to liquidate the debt. But instead of liquidating debt, what we have done is the people who build up the debt on Wall Street and the banks, we've had the American taxpayer bail them out. We bought it through the Federal Reserve and through the Treasury, dumped it on the American people. The middle class is now shrinking, and we don't have jobs. But if you're an individual or a businessman, if you're consuming everything you're earning just to finance your debt, you can't have growth. So we have to liquidate debt. This is the reason I call for cutting spending. The only one that's calling for real cuts. You have to have real cuts. That's what the Republican Party used to stand for. But you can't liquidate debt. You can't keep bailing out the debt. That's what Japan has been done for 20 years, and they're still in their doldrums. We did it in the Depression. We're into this now for 5 years, and it has to end. It's only going to end until after we understand the business cycle.
There is a vision. I mean, Dr. Paul, there is a vision out there, and it's to get America back working again. I mean, the idea that Americans have lost confidence in Washington, D.C. and lost confidence in Wall Street is a great example of where they want to go. They want Washington out of their hair. They want less taxation, less regulation, less litigation. There's a model for that in the state of Texas over the course of the last decade. And if we will put those types of policies into place, we're sitting on 300 years of energy in this country. Allow our federal lands and waters to be opened up so that we are the people who are developing domestic energy, and we are not being held hostage by countries that are hostile to America. We can put this country back to work again in the energy industry, whether it's any of the energy industry side, whether it's solar or wind or oil and gas or coal. Use it all. Put the American people to work. Allow those resources off our federal lands, Dr. Paul, to be used to pay down the debt. And I'll tell you, one of the things that can turn this economy in New Hampshire around is to pass the right to work law, and it will make New Hampshire a powerful magnet for jobs in the Northeast.
Governor Huntsman.
Diane, you hit right on it, and that is, what is the vision for getting this country moving? We all have records.